Hi, I'm Ross from Airsoft, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Sparklabs Wolf HPA Engine. So, the Sparklabs Wolf is an engine that we have just gone in here at Amped. It is actually the first Sparklabs product that we are carrying, and I'm very excited to take a look at this engine and give you guys an overview of what you can expect out of the box. I'm going to be doing a follow-up video in the future, which is going to feature a full install as well as gameplay of this engine to give you guys really the down and dirty of how I feel about it. But right now, I just want to give you guys a quick out of the box on what you can expect either inside of this, with the spec sheet of the engine, and kind of a general understanding of what exactly you're getting from Sparklabs when you order a Wolf HPA engine. So to begin, the Sparklabs Wolf engine, which I will take out of the box real quick, and we'll go over all of the packaging that's inside of here and what all comes with it. But we have this engine right here. It is a HPA engine which combines electromagnetic actuators with high pressure air. So you are using both magnetic actuators and high pressure air to operate this system. We'll go more into detail on how exactly that works and what all that includes and the benefits of that. But the main thing to keep in mind is that most of the parts that are moving in this are going to be moving based off of magnets, and the airflow is really just to propel that BB out of your barrel. So that's making this a relatively air efficient unit compared to any other unit on the market. So we'll get into all that as we go along. So we can take a look at what comes in the box. Obviously we have the Sparklabs Wolf Edition engine, which has its unique serial number underneath the Wolf branding. So if you are familiar with Sparklabs, they do have their Raven engine, and this is an improvement upon that design. So this is basically their Raven 2.0, the Wolf engine. So this engine is meant for drop-in V2 center-aligned gearboxes. It is a center-aligned engine, so that means that anything offset, this is not going to fit into without modification. And then it is meant for a version 2. So this is going to be a version 2 drop-in that is center-aligned. So just keep that in mind when picking up your engine. That is what this is built for. Outside of the engine, what comes in the package is going to be a 3D printed nut for the buffer tube screw. You're going to have a nozzle front adjustment key. This is a 3D printed piece which is meant to go over your nozzle and adjust the length in and out. So you do have a bit of adjustment there with that piece. We then have the trigger board. This is going to go inside of your gearbox. It is going to connect to both your engine as well as your FCU, allowing you to do any type of controls. This is an optical sensor board. I'll talk more about what all features you get with this guy as we get into this. To continue what comes inside of the box, you get your FCU itself. So this is an FCU. They have a little 3D printed case around it to keep it protected. You have your button nodes with your up and down, and then your select value. And this will allow you to adjust all of your settings on your engine. So we have a little baggie here. It comes with additional magnets. It comes with some washers to help secure your trigger board into the gearbox. And then it also comes with these little gradient sensors, which are supposed to go on your selector switch for your optical sensor on that guy as well. So that all comes in this little baggie in here, a couple of additional accessories. And then you have a short piece of macro line. This goes right onto the back of the engine here, and then you have a shark bite fitting on the end that comes out of your grip and hooks up into your airline tank. So that is available in the box as well, is a little bit of macro line, but you do not have the shark bit fitting itself, so just keep that in mind. To go along with the macro line that's in there, we are taking a look at how this fitting is actually attached to the engine, and we are working on developing an IGL for it. So hopefully that is something that we can bring to the market soon, so you guys can get an upgraded IGL for your Sparklabs Wolf. I will let you guys know when that is available, if it can be done, based on how the fitting kind of goes in here. It really depends on how deep the threads are in there to see if we can get a fitment in there. So I'll let you guys know if that's something we can do. As I said, we just got these engines in. I'm really just taking a look out of the box to show you guys what you can expect. And we will bring a more detailed, what we can do with them while installing IGLs, all that sort of stuff in the future. So just stay tuned for that. But for right now, let's continue to talk about what all you get with this engine. And then finally, it comes with a little QR code. This is going to give you the user manual, all of the spec sheets and programming settings that you might need for this engine will be on here. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you are picking up a Sparklabs Wolf. Make sure you know what all it can do and how to tune it properly to get it functioning to the best of its abilities for your gameplay. So to get into the overview of the engine itself, this is an incredibly robust engine. They have really hyper protected the critical parts and components of this, the electronics and such. They market it as nearly indestructible. I'll say that it has a lot of weight to it. It is probably one of the heaviest engines I've ever held. It does feel as though it is going to withstand some heavy hits. Not that I expect it's going to be getting much inside of a gearbox, but I can tell that they constructed this thing with rigidity in mind. So that is something that you will not have to fear when picking up this engine. This thing is built very, very solid. To go along with the robustness of this engine, there are only two moving parts inside, your valve and your nozzle. Additionally, you have one moving O-ring. So that means that the wear and tear on this machine is going to be pretty minimal, all things considered. When doing maintenance as well, you're really only going to have one O-ring to lube and check, and the overall maintenance of the engine is going to be pretty minimal. Sparklabs themselves say that these don't require maintenance until at least 100K shots. So just keep that in mind. 100,000 shots is a lot of shots for an airsoft gun, and they claim that this does not need any maintenance until you about hit that point. So just keep that in mind, that this guy is rated for up to 100,000 shots before maintenance, and Sparklabs does only recommend opening this if issues arise. So just keep that in mind, that this unit is meant to be installed and then ran without any maintenance for about 100,000 shots. The main thing is keeping that O-ring greased and lubed in case of any air leaks, but otherwise this engine should perform flawlessly on its own. So I've mentioned those magnets a few times in this, so let me get a little bit more in detail with what exactly I'm talking about. So there are two independent electromagnetic actuators inside of this engine here. You have your nozzle and your valve. As I said, those are your only two moving parts. It uses zero air for cycling. It does both of those actions with the magnets themselves. The air is only used to propel the BB out of the barrel. Because you have these two electromagnetic actuators, you are basically using a dual solenoid design. So this is essentially a dual solenoid engine, much like an F2 or something of that nature. The nozzle has two idle positions, allowing for both open bolt and closed bolt. Open bolt is when the nozzle is in the rear position, loading the BB in as you fire, and a closed bolt is when the bolt is in the forward position, moving back and then loading a BB in as you fire. So there are pros and cons to having an open or closed bolt. It really depends on your system and how you want to run your replica, but just know that this unit can do both. As I showed you in the package, you do have that tool that allows you to adjust your nozzle. That's going to give you a little bit of adjustability for different nozzle length to fit your hop up and bucking properly. That is something you'll have to mess with a little bit depending on your build. And then the valve has been specifically designed to not waste any of the air pushing that BB out. As I said, it's all magnets, so the air is purely for that BB, so you are able to get a very high-performing engine out of a pretty low amount of air going into it. Now, moving on to their trigger board, Sparklabs actually refers to this as their FCU. I have traditionally always referred to FCUs as the actual programming unit and these as trigger boards. That's just how I've kind of come to do it, and I feel like a lot of people, at least in the US, do as well. So I am going to continue to refer to this as your trigger board and your FCU as the actual programming unit that we have in the box. Just be aware that the language might be a little different when describing these pieces, but this is going to be your trigger board. So both of these wires are getting plugged into your engine, both in the back port and the underneath port. This is for your JST connector. It is for your 7.4 mini LiPo. They recommend a battery voltage range of 6 to 13 volts. We typically go with just the 7.4 mini LiPo. And then we have this wire here, which is for your fire control unit or your programming board, as they refer to it. It plugs in on the red on red right there in the middle of your trigger board. And then this guy goes over and plugs into your fire control unit. So you can actually put your FCU and your battery in two different spots. If you want to wire them separately to different places, there are two separate wires for it. It is not a battery and FCU combined, which is a bit of an interesting design. If you wanted to, you could kind of tuck your FCU away after programming it, maybe in a harder to reach spot, and then the battery's more accessible to kind of save space if you're doing it in like a grip or something like that, if you are going to air stock this. So there are some options there that are a bit interesting with this unit here. So to talk about some of the features on your trigger board here, we have your sensor on the back. That is going to be what is reading your safe, semi, and full auto selector switches. You have many adjustments between these. You can do burst, you can do different rate of fires. There are a lot of adjustability you have with that. These sensors auto calibrate and they allow for adjustable trigger pulls and selector thresholds. So there is a lot of adjustment you can do there with your optical sensor. I will say in the past, we've had issues with sensors getting grease or other things on them that then makes it harder for them to read the code that is being put in and can cause issues with the replica. So just make sure your sensor is clean and there's no way for dust, dirt, anything to get in there and on that sensor, because you do need that to be able to read your different fire modes and work the unit properly. The trigger board has overcurrent monitoring for your valve and your nozzle to prevent damage and accidental shots. Your trigger board can use 1 or 2 external switches for control of the trigger rather than the sensor. This is useful for non-version 2 installs. It is something that has to be selected during the calibration of your unit. So keep that in mind. There are options outside of the optical sensor for installs in a non-V2 platform, albeit it's going to be a little bit of a stranger install and take a little bit more knowledge and know-how to do. And all of the parameters on this guy are easily adjustable with your programming unit or FCU, and it is very much recommended that you take a look at the user manual to see what all you can do. There is a basic and an advanced setting guide, so you can really tune your engine to get the performance that you're looking for depending on your build and everything else going into it. So just make sure that if you are picking up a Sparklabs Wolf, you take a look at the user manual and really dive into what all you can program and get out of your engine. And then, as I said, there's not too much to talk about on the FCU. This is going to plug into your trigger board and it is going to allow for a lot of different adjustments. There is not a lot going on outside of this FCU that is unique to it that we haven't seen in other FCUs on the market already. I'll probably do a programming video and talk about all the different settings on this guy along with the Sparklabs Wolf when I do the install. But for now, just know that you do get the FCU. It has all of the programming you want. You have a little LCD screen here that allows you to click through all of your different options and set your settings. So that's kind of all I have to say about the Sparklabs Wolf. I kind of went through all of the main components, the FCU, the trigger board, and the engine itself, really to give you guys a good idea of what you're gonna get out of the box here. So before I end the video, I just want to briefly go over a couple of pros and cons about the engine that I've seen while just handling it and doing my research online. Your biggest pro is obviously going to be the air efficiency, but because of the air efficiency and because you don't have a lot of excess air leaving your engine, it is also going to be a very quiet replica. So keep in mind that if you want to do a DMR build or something that is very quiet, especially with a foam-filled suppressor, this engine is going to be a great option for that. So I would definitely put that as a pro. Another pro is going to be its weather resistance. As we saw, it is very rugged. It has coverings around the FCU, and the engine itself is built with a very rugged design. So it is relatively weather resistant, both waterproof and otherwise. So I'm not too worried about running this thing in any climate. As far as negatives go, I don't really have too much right now as I haven't done the install, so I can't really tell you guys how I feel about a lot of these small details. I will say from what I've seen online, people have said that it's a little bit hop-up and bucking picky. Not that it doesn't work with certain hop-ups and buckings, but just that it performs a lot better with the right one compared to others. So that is something I'm going to take a look at and test our different hop-ups and buckings and see the performance that we can get out of this guy with the best combination. If that's something that you've already messed with and want me to take a look at a specific bucking or hop-up, please do let me know. Finally, the last thing I'll say in my cons is that the RPS on this guy does max out at 30 RPS. So you're only getting 30 RPS at the maximum. I personally don't think that's really that big of a problem. I don't usually run full auto, and I also don't feel like going over 30 RPS is ever really the best idea just for feeding and reliability reasons. But that is something to note, that this unit does max out at 30 RPS, most likely because of how those magnets and stuff all function and actuate. So just keep that in mind with your Sparklabs Wolf. But that's really all I have to say about the engine itself. If this is something that you're interested in getting, you can head over to ampedairsoft.com. We do have them in stock, and we are hoping to restock more in the future. As I said, I'm planning on coming out with more content about this engine here to give you guys a little bit more of an in-depth overview of what you can expect from it performance-wise. So please let me know what you want to see so I can make sure to relay that to you guys. So that'll be all for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe. It really helps us out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.